Welcome to Power Score RPG. Today I'm doing a special thing with one of my favorite RPG people, Craig Campbell, who wrote my favorite version of Baba Yaga, and I got a Kickstarter, which just started a few days ago, for Capers, which is a role-playing game set in the Roaring Twenties. It's superheroes in the Roaring Twenties. So, Craig, you made the game. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Craig Campbell. I made a game called Capers that's on Kickstarter right now. I made a game called Murders and Acquisitions that came out, that went on Kickstarter and got published 2 years ago. That made me, forced me to form Nerdburger Games in order to make these games. And I've got, a bunch of other little things in the works. As Sean said, I've done a bunch of freelance in the past for D&D, a little bit of Pathfinder, a little bit of Iron Kingdoms, Gamma World, Heavy Metal Thundermouse, which just came out. I wrote some stuff for that and playtested that. So yeah, I've been kind of dabbling in RPG design for several years, and like a sucker, decided to make my own game starting a couple years ago. So here I am. Hi, Sean.
And hello. And with us are some of the people who helped Craig make the game. Michael Brock, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you did in Capers?
Yes, hi everybody. I am making maps for some cities.
You're a cartographer.
I'm a guy who draws maps. I make drawings of maps. If that makes me a cartographer, then okay. But right now I am reproducing existing maps from the 20s and maybe the teens, or also possibly the early 30s, and mashing them together and making them into the 20s. Because Capers happens during the 20s and not in any specific year, right?
Correct.
And pretty soon I will be starting on the layout of the book and working on every single page. Which
Awesome.
is what I did for Murders and Acquisitions.
Oh, I see. And Beth Varni, can you tell everybody about yourself and what your role is in working on Capers?
Hello, everyone. I'm Beth Varni. I actually work as a comic book artist for several publishers. I did all the art for Capers. I also did art for Murders and Acquisitions. That's pretty much it.
You did all the art for Capers?
Yeah.
Really?
All of
I'm
it
the
so
only
far,
artist.
Oh.
and we'll do all of the remaining.
So the one that everybody's seeing on the screen right now, I love the one. I know I'm going out of order, but I have.
Yeah, that's okay. Folks, co-conspirators here, you're not all looking at it. It's the safecracker, the bottom half of the safecracker episode with the dude shooting lightning bolts at the vault, and our little pictures are all kind of floating in there, and we are framed by the playing card back.
Mm-hmm. I love that picture with he's cracking the safe with the lightning. It's really cool. Owen, can you tell everybody who you are and what your role in making Capers was?
Certainly. I am Owen. You can see my name right there. I'm a graphic designer. I don't think Craig has mentioned this yet, but we met at a game day, and he mentioned that he was making this game, needed a graphic designer, and I essentially raised my hand and have not regretted it, I think. But no, I've been doing all the graphics for it. I did the title. I did the playing cards design. Beth has provided some wonderful illustrations. I've been making them fit into the places they need to go. And I most recently finished the actual design part of the layout that Mike is then going to drop all the copy into. So next up, I think, is the character sheet.
Oh, nice. So you did the playing cards with those are really nice
card,
with the border and like that's really nice, and the logo's great too. Actually, is it really? Oh, Craig, you have the cards. Oh, okay, good. So one of my first things I noticed about this game was you don't use dice, right? To resolve everything, it's with a deck of playing cards, right? And you said, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong. So like when you go to say attack somebody or something, you draw a card, right? And
Yes.
the higher the card, the better. But also the suit matters, right? Like,
Right.
so there was something mentioned. I think what was the worst one? Was it clubs? Was the worst?
Clubs are the worst, going alphabetically up to spades. So clubs, diamonds, hearts, spades. So if you get, for example, a king of clubs on your first flip, let's say you've got 3 flips for this trait that you're checking.
Oh, I see.
If you get a king of clubs, that king is almost certainly successful, but clubs is the worst success. It's going to have a complication tied to it. You can stick with that and eat that complication, or you can flip another card, in which case now the new card that you flip becomes the card. That king of clubs goes away, it's done. And you go with the new card. So you can gamble essentially for better success, or any success if you fail in the first place. But you're risking failure every time you flip in the card. You're potentially getting a card that's going to fail, potentially one that's going to botch. And if you run out of cards, then you're stuck with that.
So what happens if you pull the worst of the worst? Like, what is that? A 2 of clubs? Like, what is that?
2 of clubs is bad. That's a failure. That's a botch. Basically, something bad happens. You fail at whatever you're doing, and something bad happens. That's not the worst of the worst, actually. Though the game has 2 jokers. One of them is designated as the good joker, and one of them is the bad joker. And if you flip the bad joker, you don't even get to get yourself out of trouble. You flip the bad joker, you immediately fail, you botch, and your turn ends. No more flips.
That's horrible. What happens if you get the good joker?
If you get the good joker, you are successful automatically at the thing you do. It's considered a spade, which is a boon. So with spades, you get cool things, you get boons. And you get an additional action. So you can immediately start flipping cards again for something else. You can shoot another Tommy gun or climb another wall or whatever it is you're doing.
Just want to say hi to Lisa and Grant in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to just type them in, and I will launch them into the stratosphere. So all right. So you had also told me that this is a game about you're gangsters, right?
Right.
With superpowers.
You can potentially play members of law enforcement as well. If you want to fight that losing battle, you're welcome to do so.
Really?
Because I do present the game in much like it was in historically, which is the government was not prepared. They did not predict the rise in organized crime to quench the thirst of a population that was used to alcohol. And so they were severely undermanned and underfunded and not well organized at the beginning of it. So the Bureau of Prohibition doesn't get much accomplished, especially for the first few years. And even later on, at that point, everything's rolling so hard that they're making busts, but they're not ever really putting a dent in anything. In fact, statistically, by the end of Prohibition, by the last year of Prohibition, there were more illegal bars in the United States than there were legal bars in the year before Prohibition.
That's crazy. Are there superpowered cops in this?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So, like, if your group is a bunch of gangster superheroes, what kind of adventures do you have? Like, what do they do?
Well, I mean, you can keep it very action-y, adventure-y if you want. It can be, shootouts in the streets and hijacking shipments and raiding warehouses, burning down warehouses full of liquor by lighting it on fire with your fiery superpowers, which has happened in the games that I've run.
Okay.
And it can get political. It can get more about making deals, because you might be playing characters that are looking to just rise up the ranks and eventually kind of get to the top of their particular criminal organization. Or if you're playing law enforcement, you might be just looking for making it up the ranks of law enforcement and, making a name for yourself and a reputation and doing some good. It might be self-serving. It might be, for the good of society and upholding law and justice and all that. Or you might just be really, you can be a cop or a fed that's just out for yourself to just, get famous. Because, in the game, the characters who have superpowers are called capers. That's a colloquial term for them. And they are sort of the 1920s version of tabloid fodder. So because of newspapers and magazines and the telegraph and the telephone, stories get spread about them, but they always get blown out of proportion because they're fantastic. So everything is always, kind of like everything you might see in a newspaper article is probably exaggerated for effect. not only does that person shoot fire out of their eyes, but they do all this other crazy stuff. Just because the writer wanted to sell papers.
So, Michael, you did all the maps, right?
Correct.
So, the maps you did, are they like an alley, or is it more like the entire city? Like, did you make encounter maps, or was it more of the general area?
They are the entire city.
Mhm.
And am I allowed to say which cities they are?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. It's Atlantic City, New Jersey, Chicago, and New York City.
Oh, okay. And you based them on
So
actual maps, right?
correct, yes. Atlantic City is the entire city, which is not that big.
Mhm.
Chicago is more of a overview
Mhm.
of the city and the suburbs, and it has a inset for the town of Cicero, where a lot of the Capone gang locations are located.
Yeah. So wait. Al Capone. So, does he have superpowers in this?
Al Capone absolutely has superpowers.
He does?
He's very strong and very tough.
Al Capone has superpowers.
He will beat the living crap out of you with his fists, and he's hard to kill. He's really violent.
Is he
just like the real Al Capone?
Is he immune to bullets, or what?
Not inherently 100% immune, but he is super tough, and so there are things that super tough characters can do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just put it that way. We'll leave it a little bit of a tease, but there are different ways that your character can avoid taking damage, and there's like a body armor, like your skin is tougher, you don't take damage as easily. But then there's also there's the 6 traits that are part of the game, and resilience is one of them. So he is super resilient, and so with super resilience comes a number of benefits.
So Beth, you did all of the art in Capers, right?
Yes.
Did you have a lot of? Were you able to kind of draw what you wanted, or was it mostly, you would get descriptions and you would draw? I mean, were any of these characters like your? Did you just like create characters for this and draw them, or was it more stuck to what they sent you?
Are you asking me if Craig micromanaged me?
Yes. Did Craig micromanage you, or were you able to?
Or was I able to just live? Craig gave me a description of kind of what he wanted for the pictures or whatever, and then I just took it from there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sort of a mixed bag. Like, pretty much I got to do what I wanted, but he definitely told me the basis of what the image needed to be.
Oh, I see. You did the one. There's this one of a woman who's got a machine gun, and she like bent it in half, basically.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite one.
Yeah, that one was awesome. So I was like, yeah. So like, if you could make that's what I want to know. So Beth, if you could make a character in this, what would your character be?
I think I'd make like sort of like a Romani witch set in the 1920s.
Really?
I think she'd look really cool.
Really?
Yeah, she'd be really different from the other characters, obviously, but just a different aspect on it.
Why would she be bootlegging?
Well, I mean, if you travel from place to place,
yeah,
that sounds like a really good way to make money.
What about there's one thing to keep in mind. I mean, something like that is very doable as a character, just for anybody who's listening to this, because the United States is a country of immigrants, and so there's a lot of white people. But you go to the big cities, and there's all sorts of there's whole neighborhoods and communities and so forth of all sorts of things. There certainly could be Romani or Eastern European types in certain areas or traveling through.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be fun to introduce characters that aren't just like a basis gangster or just a basis flapper girl.
Mm-hmm.
It'd
Atlantic
be fun
City.
to have,
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Atlantic City is right. Okay, I'll stop.
It would be fun to have characters with different ethnic backgrounds. Is what I'm saying, like different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic City is good for that because each of the three big cities that Mike mentioned that are getting maps, there's a lot of background written for each one. And Atlantic City is, during the era, bills itself as sort of America's playground. It's building itself as a resort city, as a destination city. And the boardwalk and all the entertainments along the boardwalk and the hotels and all that stuff. And like if you go to the Atlantic City right up in the game, there's actually an Eastern Romanian old lady Zora, who is like the fortune teller type character. Does she have a superpower, or is she just a scamster?
Mm-hmm. Hey,
who knows?
That'll be fun.
I think Donald Trump's dad, right? Fred Trump. Didn't he
All right, careful.
Didn't he make his fortune in the 20s? I think Prohibition was part of his thing. In theory, you could have Fred Trump, right, in your game. Am I right?
Okay.
I think I'm right.
What
kind of powers would he have? Who knows? So, Michael, if you could, what would your character be, Michael, in Capers?
Oh, that's funny. That's a loaded question. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I don't know which way to answer that. Craig, should I go with the gangster answer?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. His name is Mikey the Wrench. He's kind of a mid-level enforcer type.
Uh-huh. What are his powers? Hold on, you're muted. Michael, you're muted. I can't hear you right now.
You're muted, Mike.
Is your character a mime?
Is it? It is. You're trapped in a box.
Maybe your character have a force field power and trap other people in invisible boxes.
He speaks only with his fists.
That would be so awesome.
That would be awesome.
Owen, what would your character be?
Oh, good lord.
You can't top a mute enforcer. You just can't.
I know, right? It's so hard to top. Last week at EndoCon, I got to play in a game with Craig, and for the first time got to use the Dimension Step power, which I had a lot of fun with. So I think that would be the power that I would use. As far as character itself, I don't know, just your standard run-of-the-mill gangster is pretty fun. But some kind of gambler, I think.
A gambler?
Yeah, some kind of card shark or something.
A card shark? What does Dimension Step do?
Think kind of like Nightcrawler. You make a big portal and you can stick your hand through it or go through it. It's not like the total BAMF, but you open a portal here next to you and you open one somewhere else and you can step through it.
Oh,
yeah, it's kind of like in the name. You're walking through another dimension to get where you want to go in this one.
So
yes.
Owen, you did the graphic design. That's really awesome. Like what? Did you go to school for this kind of thing or something? I mean, because it's freaking awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm a professional graphic designer by trade. I went to SCAD, Savannah College of Art Design, years ago, but I've been doing graphic design for 10 plus years.
It's a good college.
It is a good college. I enjoyed my time there. But yeah, no, I do it now. I'm a freelancer full time, so I just take work where I can get it.
It's freaking awesome. So, one thing I want to know, Craig, can you have car chases in Capers?
You can, absolutely. Do I have rules for car chases? No.
No.
That was one thing I started toying around with at one point. It was in the very late stages of playtesting, and I have a draft of something that was kind of getting there, but I also knew that car chases are a very specific kind of niche thing. I don't know that they would necessarily get used that often. So I had to make a call about, like, am I going to really dive deep into this, or do I want to just let the book be where it's at? I've got stuff there. It's something that I could potentially try to build out more, and maybe make a supplement or something, do like a little PDF, a few pages after I get a chance to like play it and try it out a little bit more. It's one of those things that it becomes a question of, could I get it into the book now? If I did, it would require some play testing, and that would push dates and push the expected delivery date of the Kickstarter rewards, which starts to kind of raise hackles on me, because I'm really trying to not be that guy who does the game that like takes forever to get fulfilled. But it's something that I could revisit. It's a weird thing because you have to get into like, okay, how does flight, how does dimension step, how does a speedster, how does that all interplay with car movement, and with the fact that cars don't move as fast in the 20s as they did.
Oh yeah.
Now they're much slower, and the average human is slower. I mean, I actually went at one point looking to see like who's the fastest sprinter in the 20s, and how fast is he compared to Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
And there's a significant difference.
Really?
He's still fast.
Uh-huh.
He's faster than me, that 1920s guy, but it's a significant difference. So I'm not sure if I'm going to dive down that rabbit hole. We'll see what happens.
So you could have a low-speed car chase.
Yeah, kind of. You're in a Model T on a poorly paved road or a dirt road in the country.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind, like, in Atlantic City, there's not even a paved road to the city at this point.
Oh, really?
In history.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that the big boss of the city is trying to get to happen, because it's going to bring more people to the city, and therefore he can sell more alcohol to all of them.
When I think of like 20s stuff, I immediately think of a whole bunch of guys in trench coats with like Tommy guns standing on the side of a car. You know what I mean? And then the car stops and they all start shooting people. That's basically right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. I like the idea of blowing up cars with superpowers or Tommy guns.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you wanted to do it very cinematically, it's one of those. The game system is loose enough that you could do it cinematically pretty easily. You just say, okay, you're in a car. There's a speedster, so if somebody else is driving a car that's chasing the lead car, they have to make checks to kind of keep up with it, but the speedster can just zip along and be right there, in the fray. You can do that. You can fudge it through pretty easily. And you can just do things narratively.
Looks like we got a question. Let's see. Are there classes, or do you get to pick and choose powers as you level?
There are not classes. It's basically a skill buy system, sort of. Basically, when you create a character, you have an array of numbers to assign to traits. One of those traits determines how many skills you get, which just help you make some of your trait checks better. And if you're starting with powers, you start with a certain amount, certain points worth of powers, essentially. And then as you advance your character, you gain advancement points, and you can spend those on traits and skills and powers and other things. So you can make a character that is very heavily focused in one thing, or you can make a jack of all trade type character that's the master of none.
How do people get their powers? Like, is there, an origin story? I mean, is there something baked into the game, or is it kind of, like most comics are, everybody has their own origin,
It's not specifically baked into the game, but you could certainly, write that story. Like, a lot of people, when they run an RPG, when they run a campaign, one of the first things the GM will say, okay, give me your character background. And so you could easily do that with players. I thought about the idea of getting really origin story centric, but then I've got a lot of NPCs, and it's like, okay, well, how many NPCs do I actually describe the horror story? Jeez, the origin story.
This is a darker game than I realized.
Well, the origin story, like, how many words am I going to dedicate to that, and how much does that really bring to the story and to the game book and to the play experience? So I opted to just kind of let it slide, and let people, you just kind of, like, you're starting this campaign in media res, basically. You start up characters that are going to have powers. There's a possibility of playing a character who doesn't have any powers, and you can gain them later, so you could write that into the story. But as far as the NPCs go, it's kind of like, well, these are the NPCs who have them, and these are the ones who don't, and just kind of go from there.
Are there aliens?
The stretch goal that we are moving toward right now includes a chapter, the last chapter, written by James Introcaso, who it's called the GM's Toolbox, and it is filled with like the more comic booky stuff, more tropes like that you see in superhero comic books that I didn't want to bake into the main game, because the game is really more of a gangster game where the gangsters happen to have superpowers. It's not a superheroes game by any means. But I said, there needs to be alternate Earths and information on super prisons, so your characters can get sent to a super prison.
Super prison. That's awesome.
And a few other things. And one of the alternate Earths is suffering the aftermath of their own great war. and instead of it being what we know as World War I and a war between the various countries, aliens showed up, and we're talking like, old school Buck Rogers ray gun style aliens in the 20s. They showed up, or in the in the teens, 19 teens, and we managed to repel them. But now there are some refugees of the alien species, as well as some of their technology on that alternate Earth that you can travel to. Or if you really feel like it, you could set your whole campaign there. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are aliens, but you have to go see them. You have to go find them.
So, what's a super prison like? Like, do you have? You could do a super prison break, couldn't you?
Sure. Well, I mean, I would assume that if you send the gangster characters to prison, there's going to be a super prison break at some point. There's two of them. One of them is located on an island in the Atlantic, and then one of them is located in the Midwest, and it's almost entirely underground. It's deep underground.
So is there like a super warden?
There's a variety of interesting and colorful characters in the prisons, both in the wardens and the COs and so forth, and the staff, as well as the prisoners themselves.
Do you have to roll for your cellmate? That would be awesome.
What's your cell? Yeah, sure. Put a random. Well, first of all, you wouldn't roll; you'd flip cards.
That's right.
Sure. So you could have flip cards to. Well, I mean, you could do it easily. Just say, okay, like, a deuce is like the worst cellmate ever, and an ace is like a really cool guy that you would hang out with on the outside.
Your new best friend.
You totally have things in common with.
An ace would be a guy that has the keys to your cell.
That would be so awesome. That sounds really cool. So you've run this a little bit, right? So far, I mean, how much have you run it? You play tested it, right?
I've run it a fair bit myself, both in longer games. I ran a short kind of campaign to see the character progression, character advancement play out. I wanted to see how that, when I was kind of getting into that. And I ran a lot of, there were a number of playtest groups. So I didn't have to run it as in-depth myself personally, although I ran a fair bit. I was able to get more playtest groups involved in it this time because I had a previous game, and those people, some of them wanted to playtest the new game. So it was an easier time finding playtesters this time around.
Oh, I see.
I had, I think, across the board, probably 8 playtest groups at varying times. Some of them ran the whole time. Some of them were early. Some of them were late. Dang.
Owen, were you a playtester?
Yeah, I ran 2 games kind of late in the playtest session, but it was an interesting experience. My game group was kind of wild, so.
Well, what happened? What did you do?
Oh, they just try to break the system wherever they can.
that was. Yeah.
So they're perfect playtesters for that, but they love just causing chaos and mayhem whenever we play anything. Our D&D games get crazy, so.
Like, what do they do?
Let's see. The last time we played, they immediately started attacking the people that you hint at that they should talk to. Murder hobo style. Ended in bar caught on fire, car chase, all kinds of madness.
Hey, so your group, do you have a super team name, or is it not? It's not like that.
You could, I suppose, if you wanted to. I hadn't really even given thought to that because, again, it was partway through the design process. I was, I created this supers game and I set it in a time period and had gangsters and stuff. And there was a point about a third of the way through the design and playtesting process where it occurred to me that I have not designed a supers game. I have designed a gangsters game. And the gangsters happen to have superpowers. And so the switch flipped in my head, and so every time I made design decisions, I thought, okay, will this make a gangsters game better? So there were some superpowers that I had ideas for that were like, these are classic superpowers, but it's not going to make this game better. And if somebody wants to buy the game and house rule in and create their own powers and put those powers in there, that's fine. But I didn't bake them into the game because it just felt like this isn't going to do any favors for what the gangster game wants to be, or at least what it feels like it wants to be.
Now, the Kickstarter for this game is still ongoing, right? I think there's 19 days left, I think it is.
That sounds about right.
And you've already, like more than doubled your goal, right?
254% as we speak.
So the Kickstarter is doing tremendously well. And
Pulling through all my stretch goals that I planned, and I'm having to come up with more crap.
Do you have
any way to sell your game? Call it crap.
What other crap can you think of to give as new goals?
Well, we've talked a little bit. There's a survey out there for backers. If you've taken the survey and it's available, as we're recording right now, it's going to be for a couple more days. I just wanted to see what people might like to see. And one of the things that's on there, of course, is people are always looking for more character options, more powers, more stuff. That becomes I'm very wary of that stuff because that becomes playtesting time. But there are plenty of things that can be done to build to fill out the book a little bit, just to put some more cool stuff in there, and to do some support materials that won't be in the book, but that'll be part of the rewards. So things that are being considered right now include. I thought about the idea. I could expand the GM toolbox a little bit to automatons, which would be robots and cyborgs.
Please do. That would be very fun to illustrate.
Because I have a vision in my head. Beth, start thinking of this as like, have you seen the robot in Metropolis? The old.
Yes.
Yes, that robot, but like taking a human face off. Like it's normally looks human, but it's that robot underneath.
Yes, please.
Awesome.
So, and then with a player option in there for, playing an automaton, it would be a question of what that would entail. It'd be just like, it wouldn't require playtesting. It would just be like a slight tweak to how you start your character and maybe some limitations. Like if I decide robots have a hard time with human emotions, maybe you can't take the insight skill. Oh, okay. You still have your traits to work with, but there's certain skills that are just like, well, robots just can't do that in this world.
What would the origin of the robots be? I mean, like
they'd probably be part of like an alternate Earth kind of thing.
Oh, okay, I see.
Or you can take any of the alternate Earth stuff and just make it part of your regular game if you want to. You can just decide, here in this world, aliens have shown up now too. You don't have to go to the alternate Earth to include that stuff.
So I was mentioning before we started that I watched the Ken Burns Prohibition documentary, and I learned a lot about
every Ken Burns documentary is spectacular.
I know, right? And so I think on the third, there's a 3-part thing. And the third part, they talk a lot about flappers, like the women who go to the speakeasies. And because I guess it was kind of like the beginning of the documentary was about the women who were very against drinking, like the woman with the hatchet who would go to the speakeasies and destroy the place with her hatchet. But then as it went on, the younger women would go to the bars, and they were pretty, they partied like big time, So what can you make a flat? Could you make you can make flappers?
Is this your favorite part of the book?
The flappers, definitely.
Flappers are good. To be fair, the cover illustration, the woman in white who's flinging electricity everywhere is, for all intents and purposes, a flapper. She is dressed more provocatively than one would expect for the 20s. She has cut her hair short and styled it a particular way. The flapper thing is very much it's a women's lib before there was women's lib. It was women eschewing the expectations that men had placed on them, that like, okay, well, you wear clothes that kind of cover most of your body. Like, it's only a couple decades post-Victorian times at this point. Remember, Victorians, high collars, everything covered, gloves on the hands, no sex.
Well, we've all seen that picture of the women that are standing in front of the sign, and they look super dour, and they're like, no lips that have touched alcohol will touch ours. If that was your mom. Like.
And so it's, the women they're going out unescorted with their friends. Unescorted, oh my goodness. And they're drinking alcohol, and they're smoking cigarettes, and they're moving into the workforce. And historically, the 19th Amendment passed, and there's a lot going on. That was the young women of the time bucking the trend of what was expected of women. So absolutely, I want flapper characters in the game. I want gun mall characters in the game. Women who are out and out wearing men's traditionally men's clothing that have like the jacket and the tie, and they're running around with a Tommy gun. There's almost certainly, for the record, Beth, almost certainly going to be an illustration of a gun mall in the game at some point here.
Gun mall. Hey,
perhaps beating the living crap out of a dude.
Are you gonna have, like, I think there was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? Are you going to refer to real life events like that, or is this more of a, you know what I mean? Like, are you gonna have a super powered version of that? That's what I mean.
Hey, Mike, when's the game set?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. It's set in the 20s.
What year?
The 1920s.
But specifically, which year?
It isn't.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, the point is that I didn't want to set it in a specific year because there are things that happen at the beginning of the 20s, things that happen at the end of the 20s that are all kind of fun, and I didn't want to limit us and say, okay, well, it's 1925, therefore this hasn't happened yet, and this has already happened. So it's the 20s. If it existed in the 20s, if it happened in the 20s, you can work it into your game. It's an alternate history, so things can happen out of order.
It's like the Goldbergs, but of Prohibition times, right?
Yes, like in 1980 something, as he talks, the narrator, Patton Oswalt, always refers to back in 1980 something. And the idea being that there are some historical things that are referenced in the game. There's backstory to some NPCs, like it talks about like where Capone got his start or where Lucky Luciano got her start. Lucky Luciano is a woman in this one. And you know, things like that. And there's some events that are referred to just because they're fun and it's worthwhile having them happen. But I didn't do too much of that. So has the St. Valentine's Day Massacre happened? It has not happened yet. If you want to see it happen in your game.
Was Elliot Ness another one that you? Who's Vanessa something? Is that what it is?
Elliot Ness is now Vanessa Ness Elliott, and she is a hard down, kicking ass DOJ agent with her 11 untouchables and making life hell for the Capone Torrio crew in Chicago. Yeah,
that's awesome. What about could the president? Does the president have superpowers? Could you do that, or was that weird? Because that would make sense, right? No?
He could, but what's he gonna like? Is he just gonna leave the White House and come to New York City and start taking care of business?
Well,
Is that the plan?
He's just super intelligent, probably. That's how he got to be the president, maybe.
Any character, any person can have superpowers in the game. There's not necessarily a lot of people who do, but like one of the backer levels in the game that sold out actually was to get a handful of what I refer to as everyday capers, which is like, okay, let's take the gangsters and the law enforcement people, set that aside, and we're going to say, what are some regular people who happen to have superpowers that we can just pepper in to the NPC section, and you can use those characters as you see fit. And right now, a few people have started to get back to me on that, and we've got like an actor, the new silver screen sensation kind of actor. There's a teacher type character or a lawyer, might be one or the other. We got to work that out. There's a singer with a voice based power that someone has suggested.
So the Kickstarter, I was looking at so I think you can get the PDF, but then you can also get the books, right?
Right.
And those are print on them, and those you would get those in around December. Is that right?
Well, we're shooting for December. That's what the reward, the backer level says, delivery in December. That's the plan. If I can get it done faster, I will absolutely do that. And we've got a good jump on it. And this Kickstarter is starting 2 months earlier than the last one, which delivered in December. So I think we're in good shape. But December is kind of the drop dead date. Hear that, everybody? Capers team.
Was that a threat?
A little bit. A little bit.
I think my speaker sound isn't working now. What was that?
Owen, come on, man. Don't leave me hanging.
I got nothing.
Oh, man.
I got nothing.
This is turning into the conversation I had with Beth the other night earlier this week, where you were the bully on the show. Self-professed.
Just throw me under the bus immediately. First chance you get.
Hey, it took like 40 minutes into this before I threw you under the bus. That wasn't the first chance I had.
I've been very nice this stream.
I know, Beth. Thank you.
So you can actually get the deck of cards, the Capers cards, right?
Oh yeah, this deck of cards right here is, that's the discount link to buy this thing at cost is part of every reward level.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll send you when everything's over, you'll get the PDF of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get a discount link for a book at cost, which basically means the printer gets their little profit to make the thing, but nobody else gets any. I don't get any additional money. Drive-Thru RPG doesn't get any money. It's what it costs to produce the book, plus shipping, of course. But that cost, even when you add the $15 of the base backer level, that total cost is significantly less than what the book will cost, at retail later.
I was looking at the people who worked on this book. You had Kevin Culp write some stuff, right?
Kevin Culp wrote a whole bunch of little one-page city write-ups. We got Atlantic City, Chicago, and New York get the big treatment, and then there's a bunch of other cities that get like one page. Like, and it's just he just peppered every page with like, here's as many plot hooks as I can give you. Here's some information on the city. Here's a little bit of, some interesting characters, some interesting locations. There's one stat block for one interesting NPC, and he did that for 6 cities. And we might add more cities.
For viewers who don't know, Kevin Culp wrote a lot of really great. He wrote the Time Watch RPG.
Time Watch,
which
is spectacular.
He wrote one of the best 4th edition adventures called Haven of Bitter Glass. It was an incredible adventure, and like that guy's really awesome. I was looking at the list of the people working on this. And you had James Introcaso too, who's like, he's on fire, man. That guy's making a lot of stuff. He's working on a lot of projects. I think he's working for D&D Beyond right now too. That guy's doing a ton of stuff. It's like,
yeah, I managed to snag these people. Well, James in particular, snag James for this before he like blew up here in the last few months. Like suddenly he's really, really busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a really it's pretty awesome. All right, so
and just real quickly, Tim Egan, who also did writing. He's done some D&D stuff that you may have seen. He's freelanced, and he did some work on Murders and Acquisitions. He was back for this, and also Derek Kamal wrote. Derek wrote New York. Tim wrote Chicago. Derek Kamal, who is also a designer, he lives like three miles from here. He's like actually a friend of mine, and he's the guy that I mentioned, Heavy Metal Thunder Mouse, which you should check out. It's done. It's out there. You can get it at Drive-Thru RPG. It's you play mice on motorcycles. Doing cool stuff.
What kind of cool stuff?
Mice on motorcycle stuff, Sean. Come on.
They pop wheelies. What do they do? What do they shoot people?
They run around and they help the rest of the mouse community, and they might have to steal some cheese. They might get into scrapes with the rats. All sorts of stuff. We lost Owen.
We did. All right. Is there anything else you want to tell the viewers about before we wrap it up? For Capers.
Let me give that some thought. Why don't we go around the horn and see if any of the other people, because Mike is just sitting here like, wow, man. I talked about maps once, and then Craig called on me once. Mike, you got anything else you want? Mike, you want to?
He's stoned.
That's Mike's resting state. You guys don't know this because you listen to the podcast, and he's real animated and funny, and we have a great rapport. But when Mike's not doing something, he just goes into shutdown mode. He goes into like sitting up sleep mode. He just like absolute conservation of energy. It's amazing to watch it happen.
He's a nerd.
There's actually, when he does it, you probably didn't hear it, but when he did it, there was a sound effect that came from him as he just kind of.
Craig, you're such a bully.
I am. I'm a total bully. I learned
You know
from
what
the
that
best.
sound is?
You did. I'm very proud of you.
Craig, do you know what that sound is?
The boop. What is that?
That's the hamster wheel slowing down.
the one hamster.
Yeah.
He goes and takes a nap. So, you ready to rock and roll, Mike? Do you have anything you want to tell any of these other people or any of the people listening?
Yes, thank you all for backing Capers on Kickstarter. And if you haven't, why not?
Please help
There's a
Mike
link
find another
probably
hamster.
somewhere. That's right. Yeah, I need a backup hamster. And are we mentioning the podcast?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Just did.
Do it.
What podcast, Mike? I'm glad you asked. People over there and down there. I got to do the Brady Bunch thing. Did I do the right side? I'm
You
not
did. You did.
Awesome. Yeah, Nerdburger Show. Nerdburgershow.com. Craig and I talk about nerdy things.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? 5 things.
5 years.
Oh, yeah.
5 years.
Which 5 nerdy topics am I supposed to talk about?
Mhm.
No. Oh, yeah, no.
No.
No, we've been on the air for 5 years.
5 years.
The internet air.
Wow.
It's a non-stop stream, just constantly.
Yeah, it's 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, and then 23 hours a day on the 7th day.
Mhm.
It's nothing but the fan, the
6
ceiling
days a
fan.
year.
Mhm.
The audio version of the Truman Show.
Exactly.
Any other?
Owen, anything to say?
No, not really.
All right, Beth.
Thank you.
Owen also needs a hamster.
He has 0
Yes.
hamsters.
My hamster died a long time ago.
It's just in the wheel.
Yeah. There's the middle line in the stream that are talking, and then there's the guys on the side who look like they died 10 years ago. I'm sorry, that was Libby.
Okay, Beth. Is it?
That's how we end the stream.
All right.
Okay. So to reiterate, then we'll do our best to get new hamsters for all the team members with this
I don't need
Kickstarter. Okay. Would you prefer another small rodent?
No, maybe another dog. That'd be cool.
Okay, we'll talk. A note for everybody here. The Kickstarter took off bigger and faster than I expected it. It funded quicker than I thought. We are on pace to maybe hit the same number of backers that we had for Murders and Acquisitions in the first half of this Kickstarter, which could happen by the time, by Wednesday of, I'm not sure when this gets posted, but keep your eyes out for whatever that is, 17, 18, the 21st, Wednesday the 21st. 263 is the magic number for backers. And because of all that, one of the things that I had, initially in the Kickstarter was to give everybody the preview edition after the Kickstarter wrapped up as kind of like a thank you for backing. Here you go. Here's a slim version of the game that you can take for a spin and just, get your caper on with that. I'm going to get, as soon as I get done with this stream, I'm going to go onto the Kickstarter page and I'm going to post a little update, and we're going to put the preview edition up there for all backers right now. Just stays enough of this noise. Like, people were great. They came out of the woodwork. They supported the game early. They encouraged other people to get on board. Here's a little something. Here's a little something for the effort. A little taste. A little taste. I got to make sure I work that into the update.
All right. Okay. So I guess we're gonna wrap it up with that mildly threatening statement. And so that was Capers. You can go to the Kickstarter. When this is on YouTube, I will have a link to the Kickstarter right on the bottom. And also tonight I'll be running Tomb of Annihilation at 6:30 Eastern. They're probably all gonna die. We'll see what happens.
It is the Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah, you're gonna get. Yeah. Well, they're going into one.
Die. Not doing it wrong.
They're going into one of the most deadly rooms in the whole place probably tonight. So they're gonna.
Don't tell them.
Well, they're already there once. Now they got to go back. So it's gonna be bad. So thank you, Craig, Michael, Beth, and Owen, and thanks everybody for watching. So go check out Capers and make either a flapper or the president who has superpowers. All right. Thanks everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.